welcome to Nighttime History. Before we begin, get comfortable, adjust your pillow, pull up your blanket, and let yourself relax completely. Subscribe for nightly uploads and become part of our community of nighttime travelers. We'd love to hear from you in the comments below, so take a moment to let us know where you're settling down to sleep tonight, whether you're in a cozy bedroom, on a comfortable couch, or anywhere else in the world. Close your eyes and imagine stepping through heavy wooden doors into a long, narrow chamber where silence is not just expected, but sacred. The year is somewhere in the 13th century, and you find yourself in one of the most important rooms in all of Christendom. This is where knowledge itself is preserved, copied, and illuminated, one careful letter at a time. The room stretches before you, lined with wooden desks called carrels, each one positioned to catch the maximum light from the tall, narrow windows that punctuate the southern wall. These windows are fitted with parchment or thin sheets of horn rather than glass, which remains far too expensive for most monasteries. The light that filters through is soft, diffused, gentle, on eyes that will spend hours straining over tiny letters and intricate designs. Listen carefully. Can you hear the sound? It is the distinctive scratch of quills moving across treated animal skin. Not one quill, but many, creating a symphony of purpose. Each scribe sits at his desk, his back straight, his posture carefully maintained to avoid the terrible aches that come from hours of hunching over manuscripts. The rhythm is hypnotic. Scratch, scratch, pause. Dip the quill. Scratch, scratch, pause. This sound has echoed through this chamber every day except Sundays and major feast days for generations. The air here carries a particular scent. It is not unpleasant, but it is distinctive and unmistakable. There is the earthy smell of parchment, which is prepared calfskin or sheepskin, carefully scraped and stretched and treated with lime until it becomes smooth enough to accept ink. Beneath that, you detect the sharp, slightly metallic tang of oak gall ink, made from the growths that form on oak trees when certain wasps lay their eggs in the bark. Mixed with iron salts and gum arabic, this ink will last for centuries, outliving kingdoms and empires. The temperature in the scriptorium is carefully controlled, or at least as carefully as medieval technology allows. In winter, there is a single brazier at the far end of the room, but it provides more symbolic warmth than actual heat. The scribes wear their habits and often fingerless gloves made of soft leather or wool. Their breath sometimes clouds in the cold air, but fire, open flame, candles burning too close to the manuscripts, these represent an unacceptable danger. A single spark could destroy decades or even centuries of accumulated knowledge, and so the scribes endure the cold, wrapping their feet in extra wool, tucking their hands beneath their armpits between sessions of copying to keep their fingers nimble. Let us move closer to one of the desks. Here sits a scribe who has been assigned to copy a psalter, a book of psalms that will take him nearly 6 months to complete, working several hours each day. His desk is tilted at an angle, raised higher at the back to prevent the parchment from sliding, and to position the work at the optimal angle for his eyes and hands. To his right sits his inkwell, a small horn container fitted into a hole, carved specifically for this purpose in the desktop. The ink inside is thick, carefully mixed just this morning by the scribe responsible for preparing materials. The quill in his hand is a primary feather from a goose, though sometimes swan or even crow feathers are used depending on what is available and what effect is desired. Goose feathers are preferred because they are strong, flexible, and plentiful. The scribe has cut the nib himself, using a small, extremely sharp knife called a penknife. the angle of the cut, the shape of the split in the nib. These determine how the ink will flow and how the letters will appear on the page. A skilled scribe can tell you the exact angle needed for different scripts, different sizes of text, different purposes. Watch his hand as it moves. The motion is controlled, deliberate, almost meditative. He is not writing the way you might write a quick note or a letter to a friend. Each letter is constructed, built up from component strokes, following patterns that have been refined over centuries. The script he uses is called Gothic textura, characterized by its dense, angular letters that seem to march across the page like tiny fortresses of meaning. The vertical strokes are thick and dark, the horizontal strokes thinner, creating a rhythm, a visual music on the parchment. Every few minutes he pauses. His hand reaches for the penknife, and with movements born of thousands of repetitions, he sharpens the quill. The nib wears down surprisingly quickly, and the dull quill will produce letters that are fuzzy, indistinct, unacceptable. The sound of the knife on the quill is soft, a gentle scraping that takes perhaps 10 seconds. Then he tests the nib on a scrap of parchment kept for this purpose, makes a tiny adjustment, and returns to his work. The parchment itself represents an enormous investment. The skin of an entire calf produces perhaps enough parchment for 4 pages of a large manuscript. A complete Bible might require the skins of 300 animals. Nothing is wasted. Even the smallest scraps are saved, used for testing nibs, for practicing difficult letters, for notes and calculations. The preparation of parchment is a skilled craft unto itself, taking weeks of soaking, scraping, stretching, and treating before the skin becomes smooth, white, and suitable for receiving text. Before any copying begins, the parchment must be prepared for writing. Using a straight edge and a sharp point, the scribe has scored the parchment with lines that will guide his text. These lines are sometimes cut lightly into the surface, sometimes drawn with a lead point or even a fine piece of charcoal. The result is a framework, a grid that ensures each line of text will be perfectly straight, perfectly spaced, creating the visual harmony that characterizes the finest medieval manuscripts. The margins are not arbitrary. They follow mathematical proportions understood by medieval craftsmen. The inner margin is narrowest because when the book is bound, some space will be consumed by the binding. The outer margin is wider, giving the eye a place to rest, preventing the text from feeling cramped or crowded. The top margin is generous, dignified, while the bottom margin is even larger, providing visual weight and stability to the page. Now the scribe encounters a word that must be abbreviated. Parchment is too valuable to waste on unnecessary letters, and so a complex system of abbreviations has evolved. A horizontal line above a letter might indicate a missing M or N. A small curved mark might replace an entire syllable. The scribe knows hundreds of these abbreviations, deploys them without conscious thought, compressing Latin words into compact, elegant forms that will be perfectly understandable to any educated reader of his time. Watch what happens when he makes an error. His concentration is intense, but he is human, and occasionally his mind wanders or his hand slips. The quill deposits a blob of ink where it should not be, or he forms a letter incorrectly. Immediately, he reaches for a different knife, this one with a curved blade specifically designed for scraping parchment. With infinite care, he scrapes away the error, working the surface until it is smooth again. Too much pressure, and he will create a hole in the parchment. Too little, and traces of the error will remain, visible beneath any new letters written over it. When he is satisfied, he smooths the area with a piece of pumice stone, then burnishes it with an agate, a piece of smooth bone, or even his own thumbnail, restoring the surface so perfectly that the repair is nearly invisible. The hours pass. Outside the windows, the sun moves across the sky, changing the quality and direction of the light. The scribe adjusts his position slightly, angling his desk to capture the optimal illumination. In winter, the productive hours are precious and few. In summer, work can continue from dawn until dusk, though the heat brings its own challenges, making hands sweat and causing ink to dry too quickly on the nib. Listen to the sounds around our scribe. At another desk, someone is ruling fresh parchment, the straight edge making a soft tapping sound as it is repositioned again and again. Across the room, another scribe is mixing pigments for illumination, the pestle grinding against the mortar with a gentle, rhythmic sound. Someone coughs softly, quickly suppresses it. The discipline of silence is not absolute, but speech is rare and generally limited to necessary communication about the work itself. The text our scribe is copying is in Latin, of course. Latin is the language of learning, of the church, of international communication among educated people throughout Europe. He may or may not fully understand the meaning of the words he copies. Some scribes are deeply learned, capable of disputing fine points of theology or philosophy. Others are skilled craftsmen of letters, trained to reproduce texts with perfect accuracy regardless of their content. Both are essential to the preservation of knowledge. As he copies, he occasionally encounters a word or phrase that is unclear in the exemplar, the manuscript he is copying from. Perhaps a letter is ambiguous, or the previous scribe's handwriting is difficult to decipher at this particular spot. When this happens, our scribe does not guess. He makes a small mark in the margin, a notation that will allow him to consult with the armarius, the librarian, or with another scribe who might have access to a different version of the text. Accuracy is paramount. An error introduced into a copy can propagate through generations of subsequent copies, corrupting the text in ways that might take centuries to identify and correct. The parchment gradually fills with text. Each completed page represents hours of concentrated labor, but also something more. It represents a victory over time itself, over the decay and loss that claim all things. The words being copied might have been written centuries ago by authors now long dead. Through the labor of scribes, those words live on, available to be read and studied by people not yet born. There is a beauty in the repetition, in the daily return to this work. The scribe knows that he will not see the completion of many of the projects he works on. A large Bible might take a team of scribes a year or more to complete. A collection of the works of the Church Fathers might require several years. Individual scribes come and go, grow old, die, are replaced by younger men who have spent years as apprentices, learning to cut quills, to mix ink, to form letters with the precision and consistency required. The work is hard on the body. The scribes develop calluses on their fingers from holding the quill. Their backs ache from maintaining proper posture hour after hour. Their eyes strain from focusing on tiny letters in imperfect light. Medieval medical texts describe ailments specific to scribes, recommend treatments for hand cramps and eye fatigue, and yet the work continues because the work must continue. Now watch as our scribe reaches the end of a quire, a gathering of folded parchment sheets that will eventually be sewn together to form part of the book. He counts the lines on the page, checks against the exemplar to ensure he has copied the correct amount of text. Each choir must end at a logical point, and calculations must be made to ensure that the text flows properly when the choirs are assembled and bound. Getting this wrong means wasted parchment and wasted labour, both unforgivable in a monastery where resources are precious and time is devoted to the service of God. Before moving to the next choir, he adds a catchword at the bottom of the page, a word or phrase that matches the beginning of the next choir. This helps ensure that when the book is bound, the choirs will be assembled in the correct order. It is one of many small techniques developed over centuries to prevent errors and maintain the integrity of texts. The inkwell is running low. Our scribe raises his hand slightly, a gesture that brings one of the younger scribes, still in training, who carefully refills the inkwell from a larger container. The ink must be kept at the right consistency, not too thick or it will clog the quill, not too thin or it will spread and feather on the parchment. The apprentice has learned to judge this by sight and by the way the ink flows from the quill during test strokes. A bell rings in the distance, marking the hour for one of the daily offices. The scribes do not stop immediately. They finish the words they are writing, clean their quills carefully, and cover their work with clean linen cloths to protect it from dust and any stray drops of moisture. Then, in silence, they file out of the scriptorium toward the chapel. The rhythm of monastic life dictates that prayer and work interweave throughout the day. 8 times daily the monks gather to sing psalms and offer prayers. These interruptions might seem to fragment the workday, but they also provide essential rest for eyes and hands and backs that endure such constant strain. When the scribes return, perhaps 30 minutes later, they uncover their work and resume exactly where they left off. The transition is seamless. This particular scribe has been working on the same psalm for 3 days now, and he will work on it for 3 more days before moving to the next. The pace is deliberate, unhurried. There is no premium placed on speed, only on accuracy and beauty. A page completed too quickly, with letters that are uneven or spacing that is irregular, brings no honour to God and serves the purpose of preservation poorly. Now let us turn our attention to another desk, where a different kind of work is underway. This scribe has completed the text portion of his manuscript and is now engaged in rubrication, the addition of red letters and marks. The word comes from the Latin ruber, meaning red, and refers to the practice of highlighting important passages, initial letters, headings, and instructions in red ink. The red ink used here is made from red lead or vermilion, ground to an incredibly fine powder and mixed with a binding medium. The rubricator works with the same careful precision as the text scribe, but his task requires additional judgment. He must decide which letters deserve emphasis, which passages require visual separation from the surrounding text, where the eye of the reader will benefit from a splash of colour to break the monotony of black text. In service books, the rubrics often provide instructions for the performance of religious ceremonies. In legal documents, they mark divisions between sections. In devotional texts, they draw attention to particularly important prayers or meditations. Watch how he holds his quill at a slightly different angle than the text scribe. The strokes for these decorative letters are broader, more emphatic. A simple initial letter might be 3 or 4 times the height of the regular text. The rubricator fills in these letters with solid colour, working carefully to avoid any holidays, any gaps or thin spots in the pigment that would mar the visual impact. Between the desks, we notice a monk who is not seated but moving quietly through the scriptorium. This is the Emerius, the librarian, the keeper of books and guardian of the collection. His responsibilities are extensive and demanding. He maintains the catalogue of all books in the monastery's possession. He assigns copying projects to scribes based on their skill levels and the importance of the texts. He procures materials, ensures that parchment is prepared, that inks and pigments are available, that quills are plentiful. He also repairs damaged books, a task that requires its own specialized knowledge. The armarius pauses beside one of the scribes, leans down, examines the work in progress. He points to something, whispers a brief comment. The scribe nods, makes a small notation. Perhaps there is an inconsistency with the house style, the particular preferences for letter forms and abbreviations that vary slightly from monastery to monastery. Or perhaps the armarius is confirming the scribe's question about an ambiguous reading in the exemplar. The exchange is brief, professional, and then the armarius moves on, his soft footfalls barely audible on the stone floor. The stone floor itself is worth noting. It is swept clean every morning before the scribes enter, but it is bare stone, cold and hard. In winter, some scribes place straw beneath their feet for insulation, though this must be changed frequently to prevent it from becoming damp and mouldy. The cold rising from the floor contributes to the overall chill of the room, another discomfort accepted as part of the work. Let us now observe the preparation of pigments for illumination, the most elaborate and skilled work undertaken in the scriptorium. At a desk near one of the windows sits a scribe who specializes in this art. Before him is an array of small ceramic or horn containers, each holding a different pigment. These colors represent the wealth of nations. Ultramarine blue, the most expensive of all pigments, is made from lapis lazuli, imported from mines in Afghanistan, carried thousands of miles along trade routes. A single ounce of this precious powder might cost more than a scribe earns in a year. The illuminator grinds his pigments fresh as he needs them. The sound is distinctive, a gentle grinding as pestle meets mortar, reducing mineral or plant material to powder so fine it feels like silk between the fingers. Some pigments come from the earth itself. Ochres and umbers provide yellows and browns. Verdigris, made by exposing copper to vinegar, yields a vibrant green. Lead white provides the brightest white available, though its toxicity is understood even in this era. Scribes who work extensively with lead white sometimes develop tremors, stomach complaints, other ailments associated with slow poisoning. The illuminator mixes each pigment with a binding medium. Egg white is common, providing a glossy finish. Gum arabic, harvested from acacia trees, offers different properties, a slight texture, a particular way of catching light. The illuminator knows these materials intimately, knows how each will behave, how they will age, whether they will remain stable over centuries, or fade, darken, change. For the most elaborate manuscripts, gold is applied, not gold paint, but actual gold, hammered into sheets so thin that light passes through them, producing a translucent red glow. These sheets are then cut into tiny squares, each one barely larger than a fingernail. The application of gold leaf requires steady hands and perfect conditions. Too much moisture in the air and the gold will not adhere properly. Too dry and it will crack and flake. The illuminator prepares the parchment with a layer of gesso, a mixture of plaster and glue that creates a slightly raised surface. He applies a layer of sticky size, then carefully lays the gold leaf in place, breathing through his nose to avoid disturbing the impossibly light material with his breath. Once the gold is in place, he burnishes it with an agate stone, rubbing in small circular motions until the gold becomes brilliant, reflective, seeming to glow with its own inner light. This burnishing can take hours for a single illuminated initial. The sound is soft, rhythmic, the stone sliding across the gold with a faint whisper. The result is breathtaking. When the manuscript is opened and angled toward light, the gold catches and throws back rays of brilliance, transforming the page into something precious, something that transcends mere functionality. Around these areas of gold, the illuminator paints intricate designs. Vines and leaves curl in impossible profusion. Tiny flowers bloom in colours nature never quite achieves. Fantastic creatures inhabit the margins, dragons and griffins, rabbits and snails, sometimes engaged in improbable activities that reveal the humour and imagination of the artist. These marginal illustrations serve no practical purpose. They do not aid in reading or understanding the text, but they transform the manuscript into an object of beauty, a fitting vessel for sacred words. The creation of a single illuminated initial can consume days or even weeks. The preliminary drawing is made with a lead point or fine pen, sketching out the design. Then the gold is applied. Then the colours are added layer by layer, allowing each to dry before the next is applied. Fine details are added with brushes made from a single hair or from the tip of a quill cut to an incredibly fine point. The illuminator works with a magnifying glass, a crystal or a glass sphere filled with water, to see the minute details clearly. Not all manuscripts receive this level of ornamentation. A simple psalter for daily use in the choir might have only basic rubrication and perhaps a few modest initials. But a gospel book, intended for display on the altar, might be as elaborate as skill and resources allow. The decision about how much decoration to include is made based on the manuscript's intended use, the resources available, and sometimes the wishes of a patron who has commissioned the work. Patronage is an important aspect of manuscript production. While many books are created for the monastery's own use, others are commissioned by wealthy individuals, by other religious houses, by universities, by bishops and archbishops. These commissions bring income to the monastery, allowing the purchase of more materials, the expansion of the library, the support of additional scribes. The patron might specify exactly what text to include, what size the book should be, whether it should be elaborately decorated or relatively plain. When a patron commissions a particularly important manuscript, he might visit the scriptorium to check on progress. The armarius guides such visitors, showing them the work, explaining the processes, accepting suggestions or requests for changes. The patron might request that his coat of arms be incorporated into an initial, or that a particular saint be depicted in a miniature painting. The illuminator makes notes, sketches ideas, discusses possibilities. This collaboration between patron and craftsman can result in manuscripts that are truly unique, reflecting the specific devotions and interests of the individual who will own and use the book. Back at our original scribe's desk, the afternoon light is beginning to fade. He has been working for several hours since returning from the last office, and his hand is beginning to cramp. He sets down his quill, flexes his fingers, massages the muscles at the base of his thumb. This is skilled labour in the most literal sense. The control required to form each letter consistently, the pressure needed to create thick and thin strokes, the constant small adjustments to maintain even spacing. All of this demands strength and dexterity that must be built up over years. The scribe stands, stretches carefully, feels his spine realign after hours of sitting. He walks to the window, looks out over the monastery grounds. Perhaps he can see other monks working in the garden, tending the herbs and vegetables that will feed the community. Perhaps he sees the church tower rising against the sky. These brief moments of rest are necessary, not indulgences. A scribe who pushes through fatigue makes errors, wastes precious materials, produces work that is substandard. After a few minutes, he returns to his desk. The light is still adequate for another hour or so of work. He picks up his quill, examines the nib, decides it needs sharpening. The small knife comes out, a few precise cuts, a test on the scrap parchment, and he is ready to continue. The rhythm resumes. Scratch, scratch, pause. Dip the quill, scratch, scratch, pause. The letters march across the page, carrying meaning forward through time. Consider the exemplar from which our scribe is copying. This book itself is perhaps 50 or 100 years old, copied from an exemplar that was itself a copy of an earlier manuscript. The chain of transmission stretches back through the centuries, each scribe adding his labour to preserve the text for the next generation. Along the way, small changes creep in. A scribe misreads a letter, and the error is faithfully copied by those who follow. A word is accidentally omitted. A line is repeated. Despite the care and skill of the scribes, no two manuscripts are ever truly identical. This is why, when important texts are copied, the monastery sometimes assembles multiple exemplars of the same work, comparing them to identify and correct errors. A team of scholars might gather in the scriptorium, each with a different version of the text, reading aloud in turn while others follow along in their copies, noting discrepancies, debating which reading is most likely to be correct. This work of textual criticism is painstaking and slow, but it is essential to maintaining the integrity of the written tradition. The texts being copied cover an extraordinary range of subjects. Scripture, of course, is the most important. Multiple copies of the Bible or of individual books of the Bible are always in production. The Psalms are particularly important and are copied frequently, as they form the backbone of the monastic prayer life. Beyond Scripture, the works of the Church Fathers are in constant demand. Commentaries on Scripture, theological treatises, lives of saints, these form the core of the monastery's intellectual life. But not all books are religious in the narrow sense. Monasteries also preserve classical texts, works of Roman and Greek authors that might otherwise be lost. Poetry, history, philosophy, natural science, medicine, mathematics, all find a place in the monastic library. In some cases, monks copy these texts without fully understanding them, preserving knowledge that will only be appreciated and developed centuries later, during the Renaissance and beyond. Medical texts are particularly valued. Monasteries serve as hospitals for their own members and often for the surrounding community as well. Books describing the properties of herbs, the treatment of various diseases, surgical techniques, these have immediate practical application. The infirmarian, the monk responsible for caring for the sick, consults these texts regularly, and new copies are made to replace ones that have become damaged through heavy use. Some monasteries develop particular specializations. One house might be known for the quality of its liturgical books, another for its collection of classical authors, a third for medical or scientific texts. Scribes sometimes travel from one monastery to another, either to consult rare books not available in their home house, or to learn specialized techniques from master craftsmen. The training of a scribe begins early, often in childhood. A boy showing aptitude for learning and fine motor skills might be assigned to work in the scriptorium as an apprentice. His first tasks are simple. He prepares parchment, ruling lines, mixing ink, cutting quills. He sweeps the floor, tends the brazier in winter, runs errands for the established scribes. All the while he observes, learning by watching the masters at work. When he is judged ready, he begins to practice writing. not on parchment, which is far too valuable for a beginner, but on wax tablets. These tablets, wooden frames filled with beeswax, can be written on with a stylus, then smoothed and reused indefinitely. The apprentice copies the alphabet again and again, learning the correct formation of each letter, developing muscle memory, building the strength and control necessary for hours of writing. From individual letters, he progresses to words, then to sentences, then to short passages. His work is constantly evaluated by the master scribes. They correct his grip on the pen, adjust the angle of his writing surface, point out inconsistencies in letter size or spacing. The criticism can be harsh. Scribal work demands perfection, and those who cannot meet the standard are reassigned to other tasks. But for those who persevere, who develop the necessary skills, the reward is a lifetime of meaningful work. A skilled scribe is valued throughout the medieval world. His labour preserves the accumulated wisdom of humanity. Every letter he writes is an act of devotion, a service to God and to learning. As evening approaches, the quality of light in the scriptorium changes. The clear afternoon sun gives way to a softer, more diffuse illumination. The scribes work more slowly now, aware that mistakes are more likely when vision is strained. Some have already stopped for the day, covering their work and departing for Vespers, the evening prayer service. Others continue for a few more minutes, determined to finish a particular section or reach a natural stopping point in the text. Our scribe completes the psalm he has been copying. He reads through what he has written, checking for errors, comparing it carefully with the exemplar. Satisfied, he cleans his quill one final time, stoppers his inkwell, covers his work with a linen cloth weighted at the corners to prevent it from being disturbed by drafts. He stands, stretches, joins the other scribes filing out of the scriptorium. Behind them, the room falls silent. The desks stand in neat rows, each one holding work in various stages of completion. Covered manuscripts rest on tilted surfaces, waiting for tomorrow's labour. Inkwells sit securely in their holes. Quills lie carefully arranged. Everything is in its place, ordered and ready. The work will resume tomorrow, and the day after that, and the day after that. Seasons will change, years will pass. Scribes will grow old and be replaced by younger men. But the work will continue because knowledge must be preserved, because texts must be copied, because the written word is humanity's defense against forgetting. The scriptorium stands empty now in the gathering darkness. But let us remain here a moment longer, imagining what happens in the hours when no scribes occupy these desks. The room does not simply cease to exist when unoccupied. It breathes, settles, prepares itself for the work that will resume with tomorrow's light. The temperature drops as night falls. The stone walls, which absorbed heat during the day, now radiate it slowly back into the room. The parchment on the desks responds to these changes in temperature and humidity, expanding slightly, contracting, the fibres moving in ways too subtle for human eyes to detect, but real nonetheless. This is why manuscripts must be weighted down, why they must rest flat when not in use. Parchment has memory. It remembers being animal skin, stretched and treated. Given the opportunity, it will try to return to its original shape. In the morning, the scribes will return to find their work exactly as they left it, yet somehow different. The ink will have dried completely, bonding with the parchment in ways that make it nearly permanent. Attempts to erase completely dried ink are far more difficult than erasing fresh mistakes. The chemical bonds have formed. The iron in the ink has begun its slow reaction with the parchment, a process that will continue for centuries. sometimes eventually eating through the very material it marks. Dawn arrives slowly in winter, more quickly in summer. The first scribe to enter the scriptorium is usually a junior member, assigned the task of preparing the room. He opens the shutters if they were closed against the night cold. He sweeps the floor carefully, ensuring no grit or debris can mar the parchment or damage the delicate nibs of quills. If it is winter, he may light the brazier, though this must be done with great care, ensuring the fire is well contained, that no sparks escape, that the smoke vents properly through the flue. The other scribes arrive in small groups, often directly from morning prayers. They uncover their work, examine what they accomplished the previous day with fresh eyes. Sometimes a scribe will notice an error he missed in the fading light of evening. If the ink is still fresh enough, he can scrape it away and make the correction. If not, he must decide whether the error is significant enough to warrant the labour of scraping away completely dried ink, or whether it can be allowed to stand. A new day of work begins. Our scribe returns to his psalter, picks up exactly where he stopped. The continuity is remarkable. Looking at the finished page, it will be impossible to tell where one day's work ended and the next began. The letters flow seamlessly. The spacing remains consistent, the rhythm unbroken. This is the mark of a master scribe. This ability to maintain absolute consistency across days, weeks, months of labour. Watch now as a manuscript nears completion. The final pages are being copied, the last quires assembled. There is a sense of anticipation in the scriptorium. A project that has consumed months of labour is approaching its end. But completion of the text is not completion of the book. Much work remains. The completed quires must now be gathered together in the correct order. The catchwords at the bottom of each quire are checked, ensuring proper sequence. The pages are examined for any errors that might have been missed, any places where the text is unclear or where corrections are needed. This final proofreading is performed by someone other than the original scribe, as fresh eyes are more likely to catch mistakes that have become invisible to the person who did the writing. Once the text is approved, the quires are taken to the binding workshop. This may be in a separate room of the monastery, or it may be part of the scriptorium itself. The binder's tools are different from the scribe's. Needles and thread, awls for punching holes, bone folders for creasing, knives for cutting leather, stamps for decorating covers. The binder begins by sewing the quires together. The thread used is made from flax or hemp, strong enough to hold the weight of the pages, but fine enough to pass through the small holes punched in the folded spines of the quires. The sewing pattern is complex, designed to distribute stress evenly and to allow the book to open relatively flat without damaging the binding. The sound of the needle passing through the parchment, the thread being pulled tight, these are rhythmic, steady, almost musical. Wooden boards are cut to size, slightly larger than the pages they will protect. These boards are usually oak, chosen for its strength and durability. The sewn quires are attached to the boards using the same thread that binds them together, laced through holes drilled in the wood. The result is a structure that is remarkably strong, capable of surviving centuries of use. Over the wooden boards, leather is stretched and glued. Calf skin or goat skin is preferred, supple enough to work easily, but tough enough to protect the book. The leather is dampened, stretched over the boards, and secured. As it dries, it shrinks slightly, creating a tight, smooth surface. While the leather is still damp, the binder may use metal stamps heated in a flame to impress designs into the surface. These designs might be geometric patterns, floral motifs, or religious symbols. Some covers are elaborately decorated. Others remain plain, their beauty lying in the quality of the materials and the precision of the craftsmanship. For particularly important manuscripts, additional decoration may be added to the covers. Metal corner pieces and central bosses, made of brass or even silver, protect the leather and add visual splendor. These metal fittings are riveted through the wooden boards, their points hammered flat on the inside. Clasps and catches are added, metal or leather straps that hold the book closed, preventing the parchment from warping and keeping dust from settling on the page edges. The completed book is a substantial object. A full Bible might weigh 20 pounds or more. It is not designed for casual reading or easy portability. It is designed to last, to sit on a lectern in the choir or on a reading desk in the library, to be consulted, studied, treasured. The investment of materials and labour it represents is enormous. Hundreds of hours of scribal work, skins from hundreds of animals, inks and pigments from around the known world, all combined to create a single book. And yet, this is how knowledge survives. Before printing, before mass production, each book is unique, created by hand, the product of individual human skill and devotion. The text it contains might be ancient, the words of prophets or apostles, of philosophers or historians long dead, but the book itself is new, fresh, ready to serve readers for generations to come. In the scriptorium, work continues. There is always another text to copy, another book needed for the choir or the library or a patron. The scribes take their places at their desks. Quills are cut, ink is mixed, parchment is ruled. And once again the soft scratch of pen on parchment fills the air, the sound of knowledge being preserved, one letter at a time. This is the work that sustained learning through centuries, often called dark, though they were not truly dark. In scriptoria like this one, scattered across Europe, monks laboured to preserve the written heritage of humanity. Without their work, much would have been lost. Classical philosophy, ancient history, early Christian theology, all survived because scribes considered it worth their time and effort to copy these texts, to maintain them, to pass them forward. The work was slow. A single scribe might produce only 3 or 4 books in his entire lifetime. But it was work done with care, with skill, with devotion. Each letter formed was an act of preservation. Each completed manuscript was a victory against time and decay. Listen once more to the sounds of the scriptorium, the scratch of quills, the soft grinding of pigments, the whisper of pages turning as scribes consult their exemplars, the gentle tap of a knife sharpening a quill. These are the sounds of civilization maintaining itself, of knowledge being carefully, patiently, lovingly preserved for those who will come after. The light shifts, the hours pass, the work continues. And in this timeless rhythm, in this dedication to preservation and beauty and accuracy, we see something essential about human nature. We are creatures who write, who read, who preserve. We are makers of books. And in these quiet rooms, in the patient labour of scribes, that fundamental human drive finds one of its purest expressions.